Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. I'm really glad you're here today. I really like this episode with Jill Johnson Young. I had some feelings come up while we were recording, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. I wanted to have Jill on again. She was on last year, and we talked about 20 plus practical ways to manage change and loss during the holidays. This year has been different than most other years, so let me tell you about the questions that I asked Jill and what we discussed in this episode. How do we handle the holidays? What if we can't be together? What resources are out there? What should we not forget? What can be a bright spot? Are we going to focus on gifts and group meals? What about those who are missing loved ones who have died this year? And if we discuss it, are people going to be upset if we talk about the people who have died? What do we do about those who are struggling because they've lost jobs or can't go back to work for any number of reasons? How do we include them and not make them feel overwhelmed? I really think that this is a great episode. I am going to tell you about some of the feelings that I had just talking about having to make some changes around the holidays this year. I was feeling some anger and some resistance. And as we were talking, I noticed myself feeling some sadness and grief. Here's the deal. The holidays most likely are going to look different this year for whatever reason, and we can either pretend that it's not happening and not deal with it and probably have unexpected things come out sideways at the time because we haven't faced it, or we can allow whatever is there to come up and to work on it now, so by the time the holidays come, we've done our work and hopefully can enjoy whatever's going on. If you haven't heard my episode that I did last year, I replayed it last year and from the year before about how I lost my shirt, and it's not about the gravy. That is what happens when too much pressure builds up and we don't know that it's happening. We don't talk about it. We do not have the capacity to manage stress when it comes up. I mean, if you lose it, you lose it, and that's just part of the holidays. But knowing that this is a different year than any other year that we've had before. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, for my Canadian friends, I know that you have already celebrated Thanksgiving. For the holidays, whether you celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah, if you don't celebrate, but you will be getting together with family, these are important conversations to start thinking about. We've experienced a lot this year, and the way that we heal is by talking about it. When we stopped recording, we were talking a little bit more, and I was saying, it's been really challenging having kids that are younger that have different values. Their frontal lobes aren't quite fully developed, and I'm not going to say both of my kids, and I'm not going to call anybody out. Having to navigate, and oftentimes what I've seen with COVID is we make decisions about what we need to do to feel safe during COVID, and then because of loneliness or seniors that are needing more contact or for whatever reasons, our mental health suffers, and then we have to assume a little bit more risk in order to manage our mental health. And I don't want to get into specifics. I don't want to be political over this because everybody gets to decide for themselves what works and what doesn't work. That's not my place to say. But I have made concessions. I've seen other people make concessions because our mental health is really important. And this is just unprecedented stuff. And the reality is it's going on, and we can either talk about it or not talk about it. That is my little speech. I love having Jill on. She's been on 3 times. She's going to be on one more time, and you will hear about that coming up. But she is an expert in grief and loss. She knows her stuff. She is just amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about Jill. This is an abbreviated bio. Her full bio is in the show notes. Jill Johnson Young, Lcsw, is an author, CEO, and therapist specializing in end-of-life and chronic illness, grief and loss, and dementia, and provides critical incident stress debriefing when a death occurs in a workplace. As CEO of Central Counseling Services in Riverside and Murrieta, California, she and her business partner created a space for healing that is safe for those who have experienced loss and trauma, and makes it possible for clients to grow and heal. She is certified by the Grief Recovery Institute and has created a training and certification for providing grief groups based on her Finish, Reorganize, and Reenter process. A couple of things. If you haven't taken the podcast survey, I would love to have you do that. You can either go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com. There's a banner on every page you can click on, or you can go to the show notes in the app that you're listening to this podcast, or if you go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com and click on this episode, and the link is in the show notes. You don't have to answer any questions that you're not comfortable with. It helps me get to know you, to provide content that's relevant to you, to know who's listening so that I know what kind of content to provide. And I'm hoping that I can use it to get some sponsors to help support the podcast. If you are a new listener and you want to know what the top most downloaded episodes are, you can also go to the same places that I just told you about, and you can sign up to get that list and sign up for my newsletter. I actually sent my first newsletter out this week, and that will help you also to know what's coming up if I'm having special offerings. All right, I think that's it. And now, on to the show. Hey, Jill, welcome back.
Thank you. It's so fun to be back here.
I love having you here. I just feel like, oh, I know you. I know how it's going to go. This is nice. It's comfortable. It's familiar. I don't know about you, but there's been so much change and upset recently, and I've been so dysregulated that like anything that feels familiar and comfortable, I'm like, oh, I want more.
It's like putting on the favorite slippers and being in your robe. And just, okay, I can do this now because I don't have anything that's going to catch me off guard. I've had enough of that.
Having said that, it's very likely that something will come up. But what I know about you is if it comes up, that we will walk through it gracefully with humor. And it's just really okay. I mean, before we started recording, I was just telling you how incredibly impaired I am right now. And like, I wish it was different, but it's just not. I don't know. Are you noticing any differences in your ability to function? And are you at full capacity?
I'd like to say I'm at full capacity. I know I'm not. I know I'm more distractible these days, which, shiny things and squirrels always distract me anyway. So I really have to use every skill I've got to keep myself where I need to be. And then I let myself not be connected if I really need to just step outside and look at the sun for a few minutes, because it's hard this year. And as the year has worn on, it's gotten harder.
It has. This is just unprecedented stuff.
It's way too much stuff. And of course, we have twisted senses of humor. So, we can laugh at some of it, but it's still stuff.
Yep. I think a little gallows humor definitely helps.
It does. And I enjoy it. Some of my friends don't, but they hang out with me, so they must get something out of it.
Yeah. Why is it important for us to be talking about what we're going to be talking about today?
We have got to get ready for holidays because they're going to be on top of us. And, I do grief work too. If you're not ready for what's coming, it catches you off guard and your emotions can't be regulated. And there's been so much change this year that we can't live like it would be, okay, now we just get these out and we do these things. We have to really figure out how we're going to do it so we don't build in losses if we can't do things the way we normally do.
Yeah. I was just talking with my mom. We've made the decision during COVID that my boys who don't live with us, if they've come home to visit, we try and distance when we can, but they do spend the night. We've done the best that we can, and we do meals outside. My mom, who lives with us, will join us and we'll socially distance. But I was just talking with my mom about Thanksgiving, and I'm feeling really stuck because I'm looking at the governor's recommendations for us here in California, and I want to keep my mom safe because my kids, both of my boys, work with the public. Even though they wear masks, they're young, they have different priorities than we do, and we assume the risk when they come home. But I would feel terrible if something happened to my mom. And we were talking the other day about what we want to do and how to handle it. And even having my mom sit 6 feet away from us at a separate table feels really like it's different. It's uncomfortable. It feels yucky. I can't sit with her because if my kids are here, then I need to distance from her. So many of us are having to continue to have very uncomfortable conversations, hard decisions. So this is stuff that a lot of us are going through.
Yeah, I have 2 young grandsons, and my daughter is working on her LMFT, and so she's working in a locked psych unit where they have the homeless mentally ill. We don't see her much. And when we do, we're in the backyard and we're 10 feet apart and wearing masks. And I've seen my grandkids from the front yard.
Yeah.
And I too have an elderly mom and she's next door. So we're looking at holidays, not including almost everybody.
Yeah. Well, and you've had COVID.
I have, and I have lung damage. So I've been told by my pulmonologist that I don't dare get it again, because then I might meet one of those ventilators, and I really don't want to meet one of those ever.
That would suck.
So it would totally suck. It would suck oxygen.
Yeah. And before we started recording, you took a hit off your inhaler to make sure that your lungs are open for the interview. So this stuff is real. I think many of us and many of the listeners of the podcast tend to run more on the conservative side, but even among us, we have a lot of differences. So Jill and I are going to be talking about options and things that you might face, but everybody has to decide for themselves what works. So you want to tell me about that chocolate turkey?
My sister lives in Chicago and she is vegetarian. So I was and she normally goes to Connecticut. I know she's not going to. So I was looking online to find something to send her because I want to feel connected in some way to them for the holiday. And I found a huge chocolate turkey decoration that can go on the table. So I thought I would probably package that up and have it shipped to her so my hands don't touch it and she can wipe it down when it arrives. But how cool would that be to get a 7-pound chocolate turkey from your sister for Thanksgiving?
That sounds great. And that was from Costco, right?
That wasn't. That was another online one.
Okay.
And then somebody else has a really elegant one where they hand paint white chocolate onto it and orange chocolate.
Oh.
But that's $300. And I love my sister. I'm not $300 worth.
Yeah.
So she's not getting that one.
Yeah. Where's a good place to start about some of the things? I have a list of questions that you gave me. Let's start with that. I feel like we're all over the place, but this is just what you get with me. And I'll tell you, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So if you're hanging in there, great. And if not, I totally understand. So do we do the holidays this year? Do we not do the holidays? What do we do?
Pretty much everyone wants to mark the holidays. I haven't heard from any clients, including my intense grief clients, saying they don't want to have them at all. We need to figure out how we're going to do them. Are we going to do potlucks that everybody drops off food on the doorstep, but nobody sees each other, and then everyone shares the same meal? Sometimes that works. Zoom is one of those options. How are you going to do the holiday? Are you going to make it more intimate? If you're an empty nester couple, are you going to declare this is the holiday where you guys get to remember what it was like before everyone else arrived and get to do it that way, or just you and mom and your husband, so that mom gets the holiday, but she's not at risk. And then the kids can go do holiday together and have their first grown-up holiday as the independent young man that you have now.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to be able to hold, there's grief, there's sadness, there's loss, there's anger, there's frustration that we can't do it the way, if we choose, it's not going to look the way that it has in the past. And I'm having some resistance over that. When I looked at the governor's guidelines, I had some resistance. So to be able to hold that in one hand, and then in the other hand, to be able to hold what is important to me, what are my values, where am I willing to take risk or not take risk, and what can I create? And to be able to hold both of those together, that I think if we get stuck too much in the anger and the grief and the frustration, it's going to suck for everybody. And to be able to hold what can we do while honoring what we feel is going to be safe. And I don't want to use the word appropriate, but whatever we can do that's going to make it doable under rotten circumstances.
This is not a typical year, and none of us have had to live through a pandemic before. I hope that the next one's going to be at least another 10 or 12 years off, but it is what we've got. And of course, at my house, with my having had COVID and my wife having been deployed twice to deal with COVID as a mortician and still being on call right now, we're probably a little more in the heightened awareness category of everybody.
Sure.
I take it seriously. I'm not going to criticize people who don't do things my way. The way I see the governor's guidelines, and here, if you don't know, California has some pretty strict guidelines out for the holidays because we're increasing our cases again. I think if we spend our time trying to rebel against them and being all pissed off about them, then we're not going to ever get to where we can enjoy the time together with whoever the time is together. So I think we need to see if we can get past that faster than slower and figure out how to make the most of it. Christmas many years ago was not ginormous with, a truck full of presents. When I was a kid, there weren't all that many presents. And the best part was putting those icicles on the tree and then having to keep the cats from eating them and killing themselves. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think we need to focus on the anger. We need to focus on how do we make the best of kind of a rotten situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't had the flu at the holidays at some point? Our family tradition is somebody always gets the flu. And so that person is sick in their room now. So this is sort of like that, but on a bigger scale.
Yeah. I'm still having some grief and loss though. And for me, I don't want to get stuck in it. And it's hard. I feel like I have to choose between my mom and my kids. And that feels like a hard choice. I know everybody has to make their own hard choices, but I guess I want to say if people are having some feelings of loss or grief or anger, like we don't want to get stuck in it. And I need to have it until I don't have it anymore. And if I try and pretend like I don't have it, then it's going to come up in an ugly, unexpected way.
You got to honor it. You got to talk about it. You can gripe about it with whoever you need to. But the day's going to be here, whatever day that is. And not everybody celebrates all the holidays. Some people hate Thanksgiving and others are not super fond of the other winter holidays. What you want to do with that, there is going to be some sadness that some people aren't there. And there's going to be sadness for people who've had deaths this year and they're not going to have people there.
Yeah.
And we need to get ready for those too. Yeah. But we can still make them special and appreciate that those who can get together are. And those who can't will make better plans for the next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's this year. We need to focus on this year and know that things will change. And at some point, hopefully we'll have some more of what we're more accustomed to in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we focus on gifts, group meals? What do we do?
Well, we've now been warned that because of the Postal Service stuff, we have to get our gifts out sooner. So if you're sending presents, send them now, folks, unless you have Amazon Prime and it's available wherever they are. There's a little commercial. But I think it depends on how you want to handle it. In our family, we've decided to focus more on how are we going to create experiences together once the pandemic is over. And what things, if we're doing gifts, can we do that will foster more of a sense of togetherness or more fun together? Not the overwhelming number of gifts. It's the what can we do to make the gift feel like it's something to pull whatever family unit it's going to in. Right?
Do you have some suggestions of what that looks like? It's funny as you're talking, I'm having so much resistance and I'm just, I'm going to be in resistance and I can be present and be open. And I'm just noticing like, no, I'm someone that does not have very many traditions. And probably the ones that we have are around the holidays. And so like, as we're talking about this, I'm getting a little activated.
I'm so sorry. Well, actually, I guess we're more flexible because my second wife was dying during Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Her last Thanksgiving, we sent the kids out to the Rainforest Cafe and they had gorillas serving their meal and we had takeout. And after that, it became sort of, I don't want to do a giant Thanksgiving anymore. I don't want to host 50 people anymore. So we've been going to Laughlin every year.
That's right.
That obviously is not going to happen this year.
Yeah.
Even though it's open, we're not going to go because my lungs are not going to tolerate that. So we've learned to flex and bend a little bit and to say, some things just are not ever going to be the same.
Yeah.
But some things can be fun in other ways. So we've gone over the top for decorating for Halloween this year instead. And we've got ginormous figures blown up in our backyard, looking over our valley and making people not crash into each other as they're looking up. Right?
Nice. I think that's also the advantage of when you've had a lot of adversity and you've had to flex that, as you're talking, you've been through so much adversity that you're just like, yep, we got to make these changes. And for me, I haven't had adversity around the holidays. Well, a little bit, but I'm like, no, I don't want the change. Like that's where that resistance is coming from. And, I can go kicking and screaming or I can honor what's coming up and figure out a way to work through it. But So wherever you're at hearing this, whatever feelings are coming up, it's all good.
It all is. It's a script change.
Yeah.
And none of us wanted it, and somebody threw it at us. We've got some director deciding this stuff for us this year.
Yep. Can you tell us about the button box?
Buttons box. That was the best thing ever. When I was a kid, my Aunt Pat lived in Florida, and we were her only nieces. There were 3 of us. She wasn't married. We were her everything, and we knew it. So from the time we were tiny, she would put together this package of things that, of course, my parents hated. So there were jacks, and there were other things that parents could step on, and there were noisemakers. Lots of little toys, lots of things to do together, jump ropes and whatnot, things to keep kids busy. And then she packaged it like the package from the dark side, like opened when she did this. I'm sure she laughed all the time. She put tape and string and more rope, and she practiced her knot skills, and she put more tape and other kinds of you couldn't get into this thing. It took all 3 of us, and the rule was we all had to be home, we all had to get along, and we all had to work together, or Buttons box got put away for the day. And then the stuff she put in there as well, we were 3 girls, there were some girly things, like dolls that we could use to build package forts under our Christmas tree with the boxes that were there. So we could play around the tree and be satisfied with that and not bug the parent types for everything we wanted from the catalogs that were coming in. I'm dating myself. We actually did have a Sears catalog and a FAO Schwartz catalog. But it was her way to make sure she was part of our holiday from far away. She was only there about every 3rd year. And we got to get on the phone with her and show her what we were doing, or talk to her. We didn't have video, but talk to her about what we were doing with the Buttons box. And my dad got to gripe about it. And so that connected the 2 of them. And it was a fabulous way to connect kids who lived far from someone important to them that they couldn't see.
I love that.
I can't recommend it enough. I think if more people did Buttons boxes, we'd have a happier holiday time.
Yeah. Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, what about those people who are struggling because they've lost jobs, they can't go back to work for any number of reasons? How do we include them and not make them feel overwhelmed? Or what if you're somebody who is really struggling to provide this year because it just has not been a financially great year?
I think that's where we make Christmas or Hanukkah or any of the others more what probably the intention should be. We do for others. And so if we know we've got a family member or a friend who are struggling, then you put the money for presents more into doing for them in a way that doesn't make them uncomfortable. It doesn't have to come from you. You can do it anonymously. But if they're going to be at your table, then you make sure that the rule is no presents, or presents only for kids and under $5, or homemade, something so that nobody feels like they can't be part of. And for those who aren't there but are struggling, they can still enjoy something in some part of the holiday.
I love that. What about if there are politics at the table?
Oh, I think we should ban politics at the table this year unless everyone's on the same page. And you better be sure that they're on the same page. Our family's pretty homogenous in terms of politics, but we have some outliers. And if they were going to be there, then politics gets kiboshed until everybody's back in their own camp. We just don't need that. This has been such a horrible year for politics, and it's engendered so much anger. We don't need to introduce that at the holiday table at all.
My inclination would be to front load that before it even happens, to let everybody know, so that oftentimes when things come up in the moment and then you put the kibosh on it, that creates reactions. But what do you think? How do you handle it? Do you wait until it comes up, or do you let everybody know ahead of time?
I'm glad you put it that way. No, I kibosh it ahead of time. I do emails out.
Mm-hmm.
I do that anyway for holidays. This is what we're going to do this year. And this is what I'm doing as my part, because we always host. And if you want to bring something, these are the things that will be available for you to bring. We do drawings for presents, or all of that is front loaded. Everyone knows what they're doing. And we do it for Christmas about the 1st of December. No surprises.
I think that sense of predictability, knowing what to expect, that also creates calm and helps to regulate our nervous systems, as opposed to we never know what's going to happen because things are out of control. And so as adults, we can create safety for family and family members by setting guidelines, especially because this has been This has been a year.
Yeah. Right. My wife is not super fond of crowds, and she's absolutely not fond of people not getting along. And so I try really hard to make sure that when we're doing something, we meet those needs. And that does mean being super sensitive to how much emotion is going into things and keeping it far more regulated so it's safe for everybody.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about masks?
We wear them. We'll be wearing them except when there's a fork. We were up in the Central Valley this last weekend. It was the first time I had left Riverside County since March, which was kind of exciting because I'm a traveler.
Yeah.
Stacy had only been off to visit morgues in other states, but we hadn't actually done something together. And we went to see 2 relatives who were also super safe. And the whole time we were together, it was masks on. And her cousin ran around with a bottle of alcohol and sprayed every door handle that anyone touched, every surface. And that let us relax while we were actually sitting together.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not fond of masks. I think if there's a conflict there, that may help decide who's coming and who's not.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put someone at risk. If you've got an elderly person, I'm certain you don't want to put them at risk, and we want to make sure we're keeping them safe.
Yeah. It's really challenging for people that have different ideas around when you need to wear a mask or where you need to wear a mask, and not understanding how COVID is transmitted. And if people believe in COVID or don't believe in COVID, just all of those factors can really create challenges. Yeah.
To put it nicely.
Yeah.
And masks have become politics. And for us at our house, they're safety.
Mm-hmm.
And when I discuss them with other people, it's about safety. It's not about who believes what or who's supporting what candidate. It's about safety.
Yeah.
And so we just have a variety of colorful ones. I'm going to have to bling some out for Christmas because I do want to make sure I've got some glitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I bling my cane out too, so I can match a little bit and have some lights going.
Yeah.
But it's important to make sure that you're taking care of those who need to be taken care of. And if it's not going to work, it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't love somebody. It just means this is not the year to include those particular groups in that particular moment. It can be another year.
Yeah. And it's really been an opportunity if you're someone that has a hard time setting boundaries or setting limits. And if you have very strong beliefs about what you need to be safe, whether it's in your home or somebody else's home, I really see this as being an opportunity to really, this is about life or death. This isn't about, oh, are they going to like me? Are they not going to like me? That if I have strong beliefs and I'm willing to expose myself, do I want to be uncomfortable or run the risk of somebody else getting upset with me? It's life and death. And so many of us have had to have really uncomfortable and hard conversations. And it's important. We're not talking about, what color we should use for the tablecloth.
No, we're way past chocolate turkeys. When it comes to masks, it's got to be who's safe, who's in your circle, and how comfortable are you? And if you're not going to be comfortable, is there a reason to go somewhere? If it doesn't feel good, if you live in an area where restaurants are open, but it doesn't feel good to you, are you going to be the one joining in? Or are you going to say, I hope you guys have a really great time, and I'll drop off a poinsettia at your house, and I'll see you after the holidays? It doesn't have to be pointed,
mm-hmm.
but you have to feel safe, and you have to know you're keeping your loved ones safe. And it is life or death. If I get this stuff again, I might not be on this podcast again. And I'm highly aware of that.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy being highly aware of it, but yeah. I have a $5,000 injection every month just to make sure that I'm breathing well. I have to be mindful of that.
What about those of us who are missing loved ones who've died this year?
That's the nice thing about COVID and all of this. We always have someone who dies, in the family circle. Every family experiences a loss at some point. It doesn't have to be about COVID with that. But if we've had someone who's died this year, you might also have someone who didn't have a memorial service yet this year. And so this may be the first time that even a small group of you are together, either virtually or in person, and that person is not here, and you have not honored that loss yet. So that would be a way to, again, front load, but to say, we're going to remember them in some way, shape, or form. Does anyone have an idea? Do you want to bring music that they would have enjoyed? Do we want to put a picture up somewhere? At our house, we have an ornament for every person who's died and every pet who's died. After all these years, our tree's pretty top heavy with dead people and dead pets, and we can laugh about it, right? And we put funny pictures up, not the super sweet ones, who they really were. But I do encourage parents and children to talk about the people that they're missing at the table and to remember them. You can do a holiday craft together to remember them. I know one person who does a tablecloth, and every year they put the handprints of everyone who's at the table. Now that they've had a couple significant losses, they do instead a star in gold and put that person's name on it in the year. And so this is a tablecloth that grows with the family over the years. And it also includes the people who are not there, but they're still talking about and still want to be part of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to do it.
For the people that are going like, ooh, that's pretty heavy, talking about death with the holidays, what's your response?
If we don't talk about it, then there's this great big kangaroo sitting on the table instead of a chocolate turkey.
Yeah.
We know they're not there, right? There's no way around it. We know they're not here. I've got a lot of clients who've lost 2 and 3 and 4 family members. They are going to be aware that their loved ones are not there and they are in fact dead. And you don't have to focus on the fact that they're dead, but you need to honor, in my humble opinion, which is never humble about this, that we need to honor that they're part of the family still. They were part of last year, that they're not here, and remember them for who they were. What were the funny things? I do a talk on Fridays about grief with someone who does grief with me, and she likes to remember people by what made them laugh and what irritated them. And I like that as ways to bring up, okay, what were the 3 things that irritated Dad the most, right? And you bring those in because that'll make everyone else laugh.
I like that.
I think it's important. Yeah. My dad died on the 18th of December, so right before the holidays. And my dad was the one who would never allow Christmas paper to hit the floor. He ran around with the black plastic trash bag and put everything in the bag as it happened. We never were that family where you see all the paper just exploding. And I always wanted to be that family. And so that year we had Christmas at our house and my mom was there. And yes, it was a tough Christmas, but we got to put the paper on the floor. We brought the cats in. We played with the paper with the cats and the dogs, and everyone could laugh and say, yeah, Dad would not have this. Now we get to do this, right? Now we get to have a live tree because he's not going to die of an allergy to it. All the things, you can talk about those things and remember them for who they were.
That's really interesting. My husband's father died on Christmas morning at our house. His parents were visiting. It's before we had kids. So Christmas, I think once we had kids, it got easier for him. But yeah, that was a tough Christmas, let me tell you.
Yeah, I could imagine so.
Yeah.
I'll bet the next one was too.
Yeah, it was. And then he lost his mom shortly after that. So, just that experience too of losing both parents. And that's a whole other experience. Yeah.
Becoming an adult orphan right at the holidays, that is a tough load.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Mm.
Our family has now covered everything but Groundhog's Day for people dying. I'm waiting for that one.
If we're not able to be together, then what?
Well, we've got Zoom, which I know we're all tired of. But, sometimes it's fun for those who aren't on it all day to be able to connect. Or we've got our phones that we can just do little things, or we can do Marco Polos and send messages to people. That's free. We've got lots of different ways we can connect. You can send cards ahead of time. You can do the handprint cards of the little people if there are littles, or the pets if the pets are not littles. I'm fairly certain we're going to send out poodle paw print Christmas cards this year, right? Because we can't see the littles, but we've got the poodles here. So you can do those things to stay connected. You can continue the traditions, but do them separately. There are some families where certain passages of scripture are read at the holiday. You could do that by phone and everyone takes a different passage and shares it at their house. Mm. You can send a new menorah out and everyone gets to share menorahs, turn them in a circle, so everyone's got somebody else's for that year. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different ways to connect and still be part of each other's holidays. I have a friend who did Easter this year with everybody made the traditional meal that they usually make, the piece, because they always do potluck. And then they put them on a box on the porch, and one designated person ran around and changed up, distributed the food. So they all had the same meal.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I think that there are all kinds of ways that we can be creative if we're open in our thinking and open to creating new traditions, and whether it's just for this year or moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can make a COVID Christmas ornament and say, this is the year, and this is everyone who was here this year.
Yeah.
And on the back, this is everyone who didn't get to be here this year.
Yeah.
And make it part of because this is part of everyone's family history now. There's absolutely no way around it.
Yeah. I mean, it's here, so we can talk about it and acknowledge it or pretend that it's not. And
it's still here.
Yeah.
I mean,
dang it.
You can't get away from the thing, right?
No. And I think COVID fatigue is just so real. It's so real.
It is. And we all thought, okay, the numbers are going down, and now the map is not looking so good anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's flu season.
Yeah.
When I had an office that I actually went into, I always lived in a little bit of fear of flu season, because we had clients who'd come in with the flu, and I would run the risk of being sick while I was trying to make Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
It's just a bigger version and deadlier version.
Yeah.
And we all have to decide what's comfortable. But we can have some fun, and we can still connect with each other.
Yeah. What resources are out there?
For holidays, there's good. Don't look at Pinterest. It'll make you crazy. Unless you really want to do it all. There are some really unique Facebook groups for families who've had COVID in their midst, and for long haulers with COVID. So if you want to connect with people who've had that experience and see what they're doing, you can share holiday ideas. That's going on. I get to now skulk around in those because I'm a COVID survivor. I get in all the cool groups. Dementia, loss, widows, COVID. I get all of it. Right?
That's your COVID treat.
It's my COVID treat. I get to skulk in all the groups.
Yay, I think.
And right. And we're in the first responders groups because I've got a last responder at my house. So, because those folks have to be especially careful. If you've got someone who's working in a hospital or a morgue, they aren't going to be able to be around a lot of people this year. So you can look at what other people are doing. If it feels really stressful, please reach out to someone you can talk with. Therapists are safe because we can't tell your families what you're saying about them. What you think of their politics or mask policies or whatever it is, it doesn't matter either side. We keep it confidential. I've put up all the suicide hotline numbers on my stuff recently again because we know those numbers are increasing. So if anyone's feeling stressed, please reach out to somebody. And in terms of holiday ideas, you know what? I just Google and it comes up with all the cool stuff. Google chocolate turkey. Look what comes up. Who knew? This thing is like 9 inches tall, right?
Yeah.
We can do those things. You can order everything you want. You can actually even order, these meal delivery services. You can order everyone in your family the same meal and have it mailed to them. We're doing a holiday party for our staff, and we're ordering takeout food that's going to be delivered simultaneously, safely to everybody, no matter where they live. And then we're going to do a Zoom group. And we're doing Secret Santa by delivery.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, you can do things. It doesn't have to be terrible, folks. It's not the same. It's not going to be last year. It is not going to be that Hallmark one. Although you can put on the Hallmark Christmas Fest if you really want to drown yourself in sweetness and light and fake snow. And stories that are possibly wrong.
I'd go for Lifetime as opposed to Hallmark. I'm boycotting Hallmark.
Yeah. I like to watch The Twilight Zone. And that feels far more fitting this year.
Tell me about it.
Right?
What should we not forget? All of the unrecognized losses that will be intensely felt by those who feel left out.
We got to remember that there have been so many changes for so many people. And yes, losses from death are hugely important, but some folks lost their cat this year, right? I lost 2 oodles this year, and their ornaments are now waiting behind me to go on the tree when we put it up. We've got folks who've had to move, and so they've lost their neighborhoods and their communities and their friends, and we need to make sure we're reaching out to those people. We've got seniors who moved into, safe senior housing where they were going to have a lovely retirement, and now they're locked in, and they can't do any of the activities, and they can't see you. So we need to make sure that we're remembering them and including them in some way and making arrangements to do whatever we can to make them part of things. And if you've got someone who's got a loved one who is in some kind of memory care facility, make sure you're reaching out to them because they're worried and they may not be going anywhere and they may be super isolated right now. So let's make sure we're reaching out to those populations.
Yeah.
This could be the year for everyone who ever wanted to be a social worker to do all the things because there's all the people who need all the help.
Yeah. I've seen lots of videos of people visiting through windows. If you've got loved ones that are in a nursing home or a memory care center, that if they have access to a ground floor doing visiting through the windows, it's hard for the grandparents. It's hard for the grandkids. It's hard for kids who have lost that routine of school and sports and activities and time with their friends. It's just been a really challenging year with just all kinds of loss, even if it's not death, just having to manage as much as we are from home and the fatigue from Zoom calls. And
who wants to get on yet another computer screen, right?
Yeah.
And holidays are typically associated in some way, shape, or form, at least a few of them, with something that's got some religious connotations. And churches are closed, and temples are closed, and mosques are closed. So all of that's going to be different.
Yeah.
But we can sub in, we can do things differently. I'm not saying it's going to be great. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. It's not, but it doesn't have to be terrible once we get through okay, this is what it is. And I can either stay in this space or I can work through those emotions and get to where I need to be to make this work for this particular year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It can be okay. And then we got New Year's, which always sucks anyway. So, we can get ready for that one too.
Yeah. So what can be a bright spot?
I think the connections. And I'm seeing people connecting with people they haven't talked to in a long time. Social media connections are becoming more important, right? So somebody's meeting up with friends from high school virtually that they haven't talked to in 30, 40 years. Teenagers are finding that there's different ways to connect with their friends. And for teens, there's a bonus in this. Their parents are recognizing how important their friends are, right? Yeah. And that online screen time could have some pluses. Let's let them have their friend time in some way, shape, or form. I've seen lots of young adults who've been pulling up to a parking lot and they're staying safely apart, but they're still hanging out. And neighbors are getting to know each other because really it's the safe place to be is in the neighborhood and visiting across the driveway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we've got some positives. This will eventually be over. It's not going to be over January 1st. We can't go into next year thinking, oh, yeah, we're done with 20. And now 21 is going to be fabulous. We got to just adjust that expectation to reasonable because now we know the thing comes back.
I kind of want to put my fingers in my ear and go, no, I can't hear you.
I've got a good friend that we just met this year. She's another therapist, and she was deployed with my wife in the morgues in New York, and she's got just as twisted a sense of humor as I do. So she's been building her bingo card for this year, and it's enormous. So I'm going to go into next year going, the bingo card needs to knock it down a few notches. We need to not have meth gators and scorpion piles and all the other stuff that we've had this year. We could go to a slightly less level of, really, is this true?
Murder hornets, fires, ice storms.
Right? More fires, like Australia started off and we're finishing the year. So we can look at all those things, but we can take some fun with it. I think we should all print our bingo cards and put them away. And, at some point pull them out for our younger generations and say, we lived through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What do we do looking towards the new year to really bring a perspective shift for the new year? Because this really has been 2020 is, a lot of it has sucked. There have been some really positive things that have come out of it. And there's some good parts of it that have just really sucked.
The isolation has sucked. Watching loved ones or someone else's loved ones die, that totally sucks. The fights over masks and the politics. We can look to next year as it's not an election year. Woohoo! And it doesn't matter what side you're on, it's not an election year. All that stops. And we can look at it as we have now expectations that are different. We now know that we are going to have to go into next year being more cautious. And that way we won't get caught off guard.
Yeah.
Because the biggest part, I think, of this year is we all got caught off guard. Who would have thunk on January 1st of this year that we were going to be discussing what mask to wear at Christmas and who was safe to visit with? We can be more prepared. And we can look at, okay, now are we going to be able to go out toward the end of the year? And if so, what really matters? What have we learned this year about what matters to us? And how do we make that our priority? I really like the stuff going around about we don't want to go back to normal because the old normal wasn't that great. Mm-hmm. We were a lot focused on, financial stuff and do all your stuff and earn all the money and, get through. And now we know the connections are what matters.
Yeah, I think in some ways this year has really been helpful for HSPs in that things have slowed down. We're working from home. Things are at a slower pace for people to get overwhelmed with a lot of activity and traffic and get-togethers. We've really had to recreate lifestyles that for many of us really honor our needs and then finding ways to connect that maybe are not traditional ways to connect, but finding other ways to connect. So I think that there are a lot, even I noticed around town as traffic starts to get heavier, I have this sadness that, we haven't been sitting in traffic for a long time. We hardly go out, but there hasn't been traffic. And now there's traffic and crowds and,
I don't need to go to a mall anymore. Sorry, mall people, but I don't. It's been nice to be home, and I am an outgoing extrovert. I have enjoyed being home, and I've learned some things about myself, and I think we can all take those lessons. I've learned how to operate differently. My dogs are never going to accept me leaving the house ever again. After last weekend, I haven't been to the bathroom alone since we got home because Fred is just traumatized that I was actually gone for the day.
Yeah.
So we can take some things into 2021 that say we can remember the stuff we learned. We can be glad that sense of surprise is gone. We can be glad the whole political side of things is gone. And we can look more into where do we want to go and what good stuff do we want to take from this?
Yeah, I would really encourage people to reflect on this year. And you could even take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. And you can even write down the things that you did not like about this year. And then on the other side, what is it that you want to create more of? And from the things that you did not like, that may lead you to what you do want. I really like to do writing at the end of the year where I reflect on the year and just where I'm at so that I kind of document it. But I also like to think about what do I want to create more of in the next year? And often the things that are really uncomfortable that we don't like may lead us to, I want more alone time. I want more quiet time. I want to have smaller gatherings and larger gatherings. So I do think that we can take something that's not desirable and tease out what worked for us from that and create more of that. And I think many of us have done that this year. It's a both and.
And we can make sure that we cement that in ourselves and not say, oh, but that was just for last year. This is a real reconstruct. It's a lot like the grief process that I work with. It's when you are in grief, you get the grief card and you can throw that down like the Ace of Spades and say, nope, I've learned some things about myself and I'm going to make my life this way now. And I've got boundaries because now we've all got our doors closed. So we have learned how to do boundaries, folks, at least a little, right? So how do we want to make next year reflect what we've learned?
Mm. We need to wrap up, but I'm just thinking about self-care. Do you have any tips for self-care for people as we head into the holidays?
I really like holidays not being focused on being perfect. So let's drop that whole concept of perfect. If it's not too cold, some outdoor time, because that does help us reset our brains. And we are all on screens too much. And I know we've all heard that, but I'm going to say it again because it's important. Let yourself indulge in some of the good stuff, right? And then monitor what else you do so you don't indulge too much, but let yourself have those happy moments where it's chocolate all the time or whatever is your thing. And really spend the time with the folks that matter, but set yourself some alone time. How are you going to spend some time really taking care of you and taking some time for reflection? Do some journaling. Talk to yourself about what you have found out and what you want to find out more about.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that's important to talk about?
I can't think of anything. I think I just want everyone to take their holidays and do it the way that fits them. A way that's going to make them feel like it's making their heart feel good and that they're taking care of themselves and the ones that they are closest to. And it'll shake itself out. We don't have to make everybody's perfect. They can do their own and make it how they want to do it. We can make ours safe and comfortable and cheerful in our own way.
Yeah. Jill, why don't you tell us a little bit about any projects that you're working on, where people can find you?
You can find me at www.jilljohnsonyoung.com. All lowercase, no hyphens, no caps, everything simple. Right now I'm working on getting my book out. I have kids' books out for grief and loss, but I have a bigger book coming out called The Rebellious Widow. Imagine that. And I got to say, it's a good book. It has a lot of sense of humor, and it's got how to be a widow and be successful at it and do it your way, which is Jill message all the time. And then I'll have some more classes coming up that are going to be scheduled. They'll be on the website. I'm putting together a new grief curriculum for 8-week groups and a retreat. And then I've also got a new curriculum coming out for pregnancy loss and infant loss, and that'll be out too as well. So yeah, I don't sit still well.
No, you don't.
At all.
If you go to the show notes at unapologeticallysensitive.com and select this episode, all of Jill's links are there in the show notes. Depending on what app you listen to this podcast on, the show notes will be there also with active links. And then Jill is going to be coming back on the podcast to talk exclusively about her upcoming book, because it's just important work and we want to spread your good work out to the world.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to see what you're coming out with. It's fun doing this part, isn't it? And we share the stuff we've learned.
I don't know that I'm having a whole bunch of fun right now, but that's a possibility. Yeah.
Percolating happens. I do my best writing about midnight. Finish it about 2 because it has to spend some time sifting. I'm like a really slow percolator.
Yeah. Well, I was sharing this morning, for those of you that don't know, a publishing company reached out to me and wants me to write a book for them. And so I'm in the process of doing some market research at their suggestion and coming up with a book proposal. And I've just been trying to gather information. And I went kayaking today and I had some paddle therapy. And as I was paddling, the thoughts kind of started to come in and sift together. So maybe the thing to do is to figure out how to record while I paddle, because I seem to get my best ideas out on the water.
That's why we have phones with recorders.
Yeah. And I always bring my phone with me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I like that paddle therapy. That should go in there.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't paddle on Monday. Got in a fight with my husband last night. Not a big one, but, a little tiff. I didn't realize, because I've been paddling regularly, that after paddling today, it's really helped to regulate me and keep me, even though it's been really challenging, it's keeping me at a functional level. And without that, I don't think I'm doing so well. So that's something to store away in my little brain, my little paddle therapy.
It's the outdoors, it's the exercise, and it's your version of forest
Yeah,
watching.
being on the water is just amazing. And in winter, the bay just changes. So anyways.
Yeah, I'm so glad you've got that.
I am too. So's everybody who lives with me, I'm sure. After Monday, my husband's going to probably wait and walk me to the car every day that I have to go just to make sure that I get in the car and I leave.
Honey, I got it loaded. Time for you to go. That's right. That's your snack.
My husband needs my paddle therapy more than I do.
I'm sure he appreciates your efforts.
I'm sure he does. Well, Jill, thank you so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, this is good stuff that we're talking about. I'm
glad we did. And I'm glad we got through it.
Yeah.
Stayed on track a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Have a great day, Jill.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey again. So I'm wondering what you thought of that. What came up for you? Are you having a resistance? Are you feeling great about the holidays? Are you feeling sad? Did you get through the whole episode? I guess if you're at this point, then you did. Or you were listening and you fell asleep and you just woke up. A lot of people tell me they listen to the podcast when they want to fall asleep. I get that. What do you think the holidays are going to look like and how are you feeling about them? If you've had a lot of loss and change this year or you're struggling, please reach out and get some support from someone. You don't have to go through this alone. There are resources out there if you want to work with me. I have a couple of spots open right now. Not sure what it's going to look like when this episode comes out. My brain is not really functioning at optimal levels today, and it's very evident to me. I would love to work with you. I will be starting up the online HSP course again in January. Spots are filling up if you're interested. Hopefully by the time you hear this, I will have everything set up on my webpage. If not, keep coming back. I'm doing the best that I can to stay on top of things. What I can tell you about the online HSP course is it is transformational. I know I say that every time I talk about it. There is nothing like being in a group of other people that are wired the way that you are, to get that validation or normalization and to not be the minority. Most of the time we're the odd person out. Maybe there's one other person that's like us. Even though we all show up differently in our traits as highly sensitive people, there really is something about being with people that really have a shared experience. And it's often like reparenting, having that experience of being in a very small group that's safe. Everybody's going through different stuff. And what I see is just this beautiful thread of connection. And some of the groups have stayed in touch after the course is over. Some of them haven't. I don't have any control over that. As I'm learning to do some better screening, it seems like the cohesion is getting better. I just think it's a great way to treat yourself. This has been a doozy of a year. If you're really wanting to learn to lean into your HS traits, to embrace them, learn how to see the gifts and strengths in them, and really just reach a new level of acceptance and learn some tools, I think it's just a great opportunity. But y'all decide for yourself. Trying to think if there's anything else. As we head into the holidays, we can do this differently. This is going to be a different year. We can do it. I think that's it. My gremlins are telling me I just tell you the same thing every week, so stop saying it. I think what I want you to know is no matter where you're at, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be anywhere else. You're not supposed to be feeling anything different. That however you're showing up and feeling in the world today is perfect just for you. You are beautiful. You're creative. You're talented. You're gifted. You're sensitive. You're caring. And I just really appreciate you. And I hope that you can take that in, because I really am grateful for you being here and I care about you. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.